So as we know, the Gyaru subculture started in the early 1990s, hitting a new peak around 2010. Gyaru has existed in one form or another for 2 decades, and the style has changed dramatically multiple times and splintered into distinct factions. A few of them have been stable, which is hair dyed anywhere between chestnut and deep blonde, sexually provocative clothing, and an embrace of youth, shopping in Shibuya 109, and a wild attitude. Get wild, be sexy. Now, the long-term Gyaru dominance is something people assumed it to be Japanese economy's inability to invent and push new styles. However, that's just simply not true because Gyaru of 2012 look almost nothing like the Gyaru of 2000s, let alone of 1992 Gyaru. In other words, that's a load of bullshit. The Gyaru look has shifted from the relatively natural Kogeru schoolgirls of 1995 to the shocking Genguru of 2000. I'm going to be talking about Genguru later into this video, but first I want to get into Kogeru and the topic of Smack's work and what the media said about Kogerus and things of that nature. But I do find it so cute how Genguros, besides the obvious more than 3 shades, like I'll get into that later in the video, I do find it cute how they use the colorful clothes. Like Kogeru has colorful clothes as well, but I like how Genguro took the aspect of that from the last trend. Even though they wanted to have something new, a new era for themselves, it's cute that they have colorful hair. They have silver hair. They use these types of hair colors and colors to just style themselves. And I'll talk about later why that's important. But yeah, also the shoes that they're wearing, is that Demonias? Still very stylish. Even though they're not Kogerus, they're still very stylish and they have their own thing going on too. And what I also do admire about Genguros is that they're like, fuck these men. I don't want attention from them. And they went as wild and as crazy as they could be. Now, they initially did not really think oh, I'm doing blackface. They were just trying to go as extreme as possible without really thinking about themselves. But I do think about, maybe there's more to that. But I'll talk about that later. But as well as they spent hours on their look. They bleached their hair. They practiced para. They made an entire persona that was very vibrant, loud, and impossible to ignore. And that's why these Japanese men also hated them. They weren't trying to be nonchalant. They were the heart of Shibuya club scene at a point. They made these creative, synchronized, high energy routines. And it's still even being made to this day. People still to this day do para. Now, it may not be as much as it used to be, but I do enjoy para. I like to do para. So, I don't know. I do have some good things to say about them. I just wanted to add that in there before I go into the rest of my topic. But yeah, I just wanted to say that real quick. But okay, let's go back to what I'm talking about. Gyarus and their hair color. To the glamorous blondes of 2008, while they're very different, they understood themselves to be Gyaru, and were understood in the wider society as Gyaru as well. Now, the class composition of Gyaru has changed over time because the Gyaru style started as a delinquent look for rich girls at the top of Tokyo private schools, but they ended up as the new face of a non-urban working class delinquent style, blending seamlessly into a preferred aesthetic of Kaibajo Women of the night. Gyaru is the perfect way to understand how style in Japan often trickles down from middle class through the mass media. Now, ko-gyarus are described as ages to 14 to 18 years old, and these women would go on dates with Japanese men. It could be for 3 minutes to sing at a karaoke bar, or it will be for sexual favors so then they can keep up with the lifestyle of a gyaru, keep up their tans, keep up their makeup, upkeep their bags, upkeep the aesthetic, their clothes. Ko-gyaru emerged just as Japanese men grew bored with the 1980s obsession over female college students. Basically, they got bored of women of the appropriate age range. Wow. Also, ko-gyarus were a popular talking point in magazines, articles, so that also helped Japanese men obsession to see them as a sexual object. And they saw them as that sexual object for a decade. These party girls with short skirts and bare legs, golden brown, they would sexualize them. There was an article that was ran about purchasing sexual favors from high school girls. The magazine Takarajima is the article that did this. This was normalized in Japan to sexualize high school girls. I mean, I'm pretty sure it still is. There is a very high sexual assault rate over there, but I'm just saying, like, at this time point when it's like was happening actively with gyaru girls, and what happened at that time point is I'm saying this is normalized to do. But in the context of general and for women, yeah, this is still happening. But I'm saying for gyaru girls, this was the thing to do. This inspired teenage girls to feel no type of way about them selling themselves for profit to get the lifestyle that they're looking for. There was also a new type of S shop as well for school girls. They had sailor suit uniforms, underwear, and even bodily fluids. The police eventually started to crack down on these stores, and you know how many girls they rounded up? Hundreds of them. But the shops never disappeared, but the police bus had a lot of spread all over the place because of the trend, because of what these schoolgirls were trying to do. So Japanese people understood that gals were party girls. They're looking for trendy looks. They're cheerful. They don't care if they're guy is from money or a good family. They just go for that type of stuff because they're looking for a certain type of lifestyle. Now in the 1980s, magazines like Gal's Life, Carrot Gals, Pop Teen Kids, and Elle Girl or Ellie Girl, they wanted to represent gals, but by offering more realistic stories about teenage smacks than one would find in the middle class consumerist lifestyle magazines, because it all starts with the uppity teenagers that could easily afford these bags and easily afford these things, and then it trickles down to the regular people where gals start being promiscuous because they want certain things. But the magazines also didn't help it by kind of also normalizing it to where they had a certain mindset. Oh, okay, I'm probably doing that the wrong thing. I'm selling myself for, a bag. I'm a teenager. I'm 14, 15 years old. I shouldn't be having S with a 35-year-old man. This is not good. So magazines kind of just to them made it okay, people are starting to recognize and know what we're doing. Okay, this is normal. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. So pretty much in 1984, gal became a stereotyped as sexually promiscuous, and a term that has obviously negative connotations. Men didn't say, oh, she's promiscuous and left them alone. No, it was pretty much they were taking full advantage of that. In the bubble era, gals were wearing tight-fitting outfits and dancing on raised platforms at mega discos. So, gal became known as a party girl that goes to discos. These gals would also hang out with their boyfriends. These boyfriends would be called chimas. Now, this is a forgotten timeline in pop culture, but the girls who grouped around chimas spent a lot of time at tanning salons, and they loved the style of Los Angeles and wore LA gear sneakers. Now, this was something for Parco's Across marketing guide, and it ended up calling these girls Peru gal, who tried to maintain a paradise, beach-oriented lifestyle all year round. The Perugeru was never mainstream or a well-known subculture, but these surfer girl elements would help mark Kerugeru style. More importantly, the first Kerugerus were some of the younger girls in Chima circles. The original Gerus are girls from other private high schools who hung out with the bad boys, which is chimas. The first Shibuya Kogerus were essentially chimas' girlfriends. So let's talk more about how much these teenagers would get and why they continue to do this. So girls would accept about $10,000 in yen, and that converts to $63 in USD. All corners of life, especially upper middle class ones, were rushing to Shibuya and having smacks with men in karaoke boxes just to buy luxury goods. And then they would run to Shibuya and find more buyers. A lot of schoolgirls prostituted themselves in this era, but there is no exact number, but this was a very widespread phenomenon. So, yeah, girls also lost their V cards by the end of high school because of this era. And it was said that kogerus were wild and sexy. Now, this is only a concern to me because 14 to 18, 18 is legal, sure, but 14, 15, 16, 17, wow. Minors, but this is what was going on at the time. But then later it became understood. A sexual health doctor named Akada, who spent years giving free consultations to teen girls in Tokyo, explained to Takarajima in February 2008 the girls called Gyaru had too much pride and weren't the ones doing Enjo Kosai. Yes, kogerus had sex with their boyfriends, but they weren't the primary ones having sex with older men for money. Akada identified the girls who engaged in Enjo Kosai as lonely outsiders. The Gyaru style attitude and Louis Vuitton bags, however, made them fit the stereotype, and they faced both wrath of moral authorities as well as the constant advances of older men in the streets. So what happened here is that the media made kogerus so famous, the girls who weren't actually a part of the Shibuya gal scene started dressing like them. So obviously outsiders like these Japanese men can't tell the difference. And they most likely saw the media reports saying, hey, gals get rich by going on dates. And then they started doing just that. Because of this, Japanese men would go up to these women and ask, how much is smacks? Now, a kogeru who has went to an interview and said this. It's the damn media. They give people the idea we're down for whatever. If you had blonde hair and loose socks, everyone looked at you like you were a teenage prostitute. Now, this was able to change the Gyaru subculture in many ways. It is also believed that the kogerus' constant harassment from older men is what led to the development of their famously gruff and masculine speech. They turned inward to their own group, but angry and intimidating to outsiders. There was no store for a Kogeru. Now, in the beginning of the video, we were talking about Kogeru. I did mention Gyaru. Like, so now we're going to shift focus from Kogeru Shibuya 109 created a location for the Kogeru style to live. They were pumping out like thousands of new things to build a Kogeru outfit. They did not even need to use their uniform anymore. They could wear midriffs from Mijane and Esperanza, platform sandals, and hardcore flare miniskirts from surfer brands, Alba Rosa. They were just going all out because they have an official shop to go to. Now, eventually, Kogerus opened up their growing subculture to girls who were not in the proper Tokyo social status to participate before, and anyone who shopped at Shibuya 109 could now potentially become a Kogeru, making the style more open to non-Tokyo girls and the middle class. Shibuya 109 is still popular to this day and is a main fashion instigator for the Geru style. And one of the reasons for the more complex, enduring successes have been the brand's innovation in retailing methods, namely creating strong relations between the customers and the shop clerk. Thus, shop clerk will be getting hella tips. Thus, shop clerk even started to be an authoritative figure to help these girls out and to make these companies money. Now, these store clerks would act as a big sister, and these Kogerus would buy whatever was recommended to them. And these clerks even became featured in magazines as the brand's spokespeople, leading to even more fans going from across the country just to come to Shibuya 109, just to meet them and buy whatever they recommended. Now, obviously, as we know, Kogeru style broke into the mainstream in the second half of the 1990s. The look itself still carried what you want to call, I guess, quote-unquote, delinquent overtones. And the girls dyeing their hair chestnut brown did so because of the active rebellious nature. Other parts of Kogeru style, however, became less controversial in decisions in the consumer space and dominated the pop culture of this time. Of course, as I mentioned plenty of times before, the famous Japanese singer Namie is the perfect example of quote-unquote safe Geru culture. A Kogeru-like singer who became the most popular female artist of the 1990s. As you may know already or not know, at the end of the decade, the Gyaru subculture made one of the most radical shifts of any Japanese fashion subculture ever. While this shocked people or frightened and maybe even disgusted wider society and turned away regular everyday high school students who had once looked into Gyaru for their fashion cues, Kogeru had entered into the era of Gyaru. Kogeru has left the station and Gyaru entered, and there is nothing anyone can do about that. Now, the original Shibuya Gyaru, which I was already telling you guys about, the original Gyarus, the Kogerus, were rich from private schools. At the time, these Kogerus, the original ones, were chilling with their boyfriends, chilling with their chimas, their boyfriends. So they're from wealthy homes, rich, delinquent styles, had completely left the building. And instead, kamataki, which is what they were called at the time, and just in case you don't know, kamataki is basically comes from Kamata, a neighborhood in Tokyo that was seen as less affluent or more blue collar compared to the center of Shibuya. While Shibuya key girls had light surfer tans, Kamata key girls pushed the trend of much darker, eventually leading into the Ganguro style. So since they couldn't afford the high-end luxury brands, the luxury brands ended up just making cheaper material, not as well made as when the Shibuya key girls were there. Now, I already talked about this obvious blackface, but at the time when they were doing it, they didn't mean it as blackface. They just thought, oh, we're just going against the societal norms. We know darker skin is looked at a certain type of way, like less than fair skinned, than lighter skin. So that's what they did. So they didn't have to get attention from men. They didn't care about the attention from men. They more so wanted validation from their female peers. So, they went crazier. They wanted to stand out from the Kogerus. It's a new era, so they went extreme. And it's just so funny how they knew darker skin was not appealing, and they did it, but to like an African American person, our lived experience, because we can fucking think about, what we go through and everything, since we're self-aware, then more so than like fair-skinned people, because they don't have to think about this type of stuff. It's just like, that just says a lot. Like, y'all know that, and y'all did that anyway. Y'all were just thinking about yourselves. Y'all were just thinking about what y'all needed to do, and y'all just like, oh, we just don't know anything. We're just like in La La Loopsy land. We just don't know anything about what we're doing. But I do think that they were just doing that shit because they are just like, oh, we're just going against the grain. But I really do think, like, besides that being their point, I feel like they have to have some type of awareness at the same time. I do think it was like, okay, we want to go against the norm. We know dark skin is not acceptable amongst this community. We're going to go darker. We're not going to do a light tan. We're going to go darker. I do think it was that, but I think it was also, you have the self-awareness to know. If you know darker skin isn't the it thing to be, you have self-awareness about other things. Like, I don't know, a black person existing in the society, because why the fuck, like, it's just, to me, it's just like, come the fuck on, man. Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna lie, I don't care about anyone else's opinion that is not black when talking about this certain types of topics, because I just don't care about your opinion. I more so care about other black people's opinion when it comes to shit like this, because it's affecting the black community. It's literal blackface. But did they think it was blackface at the time? No. But it's just like, come on, dude. I really do think it had to be some type of awareness about darker skin. Okay, in our community, we don't like darker skin. What else is darker skin? Black people. And y'all looking like that because y'all knew. Do I think they put that shit on and say, I hate fucking niggers? No. I don't think so. But I do think there was some type of awareness about what the fuck they're putting on. They know black people exist. They know how the community feels. So that's just my take. That's me. Now, women came from the style Yankee, which is like, if you want to call it, like darker toned aesthetics. It's like biker vibes. And it's kind of like masculine over there, because, a lot of men are in a Yankee type of style. There is women clearly by the photo I'm showing. But it's just like, there was like a feud between Yankee girls and Kogerus. And it was more so because Kogeru at the time was the new trend, and they were like the old trend. But a lot of Yankee girls turned into Gyaru. And then there was like an uneven amount of Yankee girls compared to girls who are Gyaru. Pretty much, these women rejected the term Kogeru and revived it with their own style with the original term Gyaru. Gyaru at that point to them will be a historical period of the 1990s female fashion. At the same time, with so many girls clusters and Tokyo's commuter hubs, a group of guys in the same age range would rush to their side called Gyarus. Now, you would think a Gyaru has a more like masculine version of to the female, but not necessarily. They have tons of sub-styles within the Gyaru. Now, a lot of men in Japan were angry about this new style simply because they'd gotten used to Gyaru for like 10 years, viewed them as sex objects, what they consider unattractive with war paint on their faces, as they would say. They even said that they looked burnt beyond recognition. Needless to say, the most angry may have been Men's Magazine, who had coggled Gyaru, like I said. Now, a Gyaru has been interviewed. This is not the Gyaru has been interviewed. This is just an example. But a Gyaru spoke on the Tokyo Damage Report, and it's been noted a huge shift from new girls who entered the look in 1999. She said they've been reading the magazines and studying the Gyaru since they were 13. So they had basically passed through their Gyaru phase while still in junior high. By the time they get old enough to make a debut on the Shibuya streets, they were already past the Gyaru phase. Darker skin, shorter skirts, brighter colors, more extreme dieting. In other words, Gyaru who had reached a peak age were not just fighting against the mainstream Gyaru style, but also looking to move into new directions from their own past. Also, since these women moved from Yankee into Ganguro, the bright colors is probably something they enjoyed, since the Yankees is more darker aesthetic and more male dominated. So I feel like they wanted to really make their mark and make sure that people knew there was a difference between Gyarus and them, because every time there is a new era, those people within that sub-style creating and having that new era want other people to know what they are and what type of Gyaru they are and what they represent. So this time, from what we're talking about, was Ganguro. And I also wanted to point out extreme dieting. There is such a toxic culture with extreme dieting in Japan. As we already know, there is a difference between Western Gyarus and Japanese Gyarus in Japan, because they have dieting ads like in magazines all over the place. There's not a real comfort just to be fat over there. You need to be in shape, and not even just in shape, but skinny, and more than skinny, like tiny. There's such a dieting problem over there. But it's very interesting to me about everything that we talked about in this video. I just thought to go into about Ganguro and how we got here. How we got from S-work in the Gyaru community, and how that even is a thing. How that even was attached to the Gyarus, and just to get a little deeper on that. And I just want to point this out one more time, just in case anyone got comfortable when I was talking about the darker skin tans that they were doing and what their intention was at the time, and my whole thing of what I was saying as just, an African American woman. If I do see anyone who is obviously not black fucking making themselves this dark, and I see that shit, I'm going to call that shit out. Like, swear. Like, I swear. Like, that shit is not acceptable in the climate, in the day and age we live in. You cannot be doing shit like this. You need to be self-fucking aware. Remember the 3-shade rule. And that's all I have to say for this video, guys. Thank you so much. Click the notification bell if you want to hear more from me. Click that subscribe button, and I'll see you later. Bye. Mwah.